Okay, my friends, a wonderful principle, freedom of speech. However, you have to be heard when you speak. And I have the most important information that has ever been presented to humanity since Jesus Christ showed up and said, you guys are in trouble. And I'm going to tell you right now, we are in the deepest trouble you have ever seen. And I am refused to be heard. I don't care if you can speak or not. Being heard is the important part. Not allowed for me. Okay, once again, Roger, or Roger as you might say, and I am going to be talking about Immanuel Velikovsky today, who is really my greatest hero, and he should be yours, and he will be if you pay attention. Now, he was destroyed by academia for coming out with truth. Now, this is a documentary they're doing on him 14 years after they destroyed him. They forced him to take his book off the shelf after being on the bestseller list 11 weeks in a row. The publisher said take it off because the academics hate it and they're going to stop doing business with us. So they forced him to take it off the shelves. Now listen to what they have to say here. This is from Lectures Beyond Beyond. And it's Immanuel Velikovsky interview. And this is from 6 years ago, and this goes way back to, I think, 1972 or something. Anyway, here goes.
Ago in 1950, an amazingly unconventional thinker astounded the scientific community with a theory that challenged many of its most deeply rooted assumptions. In a persuasive bestseller, this man presented a radical view of world history that linked research and hypotheses in such diverse disciplines as astronomy, geology, comparative religion, and archaeology. A storm of protest arose from every corner of this academic world, claiming that the theory was totally wrong. This opposition soon turned into an attempt to suppress the book and discredit the man who wrote it.
They destroyed him.
The man is Immanuel Velikovsky, Russian-born doctor and psychoanalyst, student of the sciences and humanities, founder and one-time editor of the Scripta Universitatis series, out of which grew the Hebrew University in Jerusalem.
By the way, he was a contemporary of Einstein. They knew each other, and Einstein respected him. And Einstein died with Velikovsky's book open on his bed.
For the last 25 years, Dr. Velikovsky has been resident in the United States, where he has continued his studies and advanced his theories. His first book was titled Worlds in Collision, and that was followed by Ages in Chaos, Earth in Upheaval, and Oedipus and Akhenaten. Dr. Velikovsky's contention is that in the memory of man, the Earth has gone through great natural paroxysms. He's founded his theory on the ancient records of man from all over the world, on archaeological evidence in the form of ancient calendars that have become strangely obsolete. And
let me just interject another thing. He went to every library, to every museum. Well, not everyone, but he went to all the major libraries, museums. He looked at all the carvings. He was a very knowledgeable guy. He was right there. He was in the thick of academia, and that's what made him go crazy. And then they destroyed him for the rest of his life. Okay, so here we go. Let's see what he has to say now.
And new and radical interpretations of information from astronomy, paleontology, paleomagnetism, and evolution. In addition, Dr. Velikovsky's theory has led him to re-examine prevailing views regarding the origins of religion, as well as those which form the basis of celestial mechanics. And he also calls for a realignment of the chronologies of ancient civilizations.
It's exactly what I'm doing, 100% exact. And I go, and I have some very, very solid physical evidence, a little different now. We've got, Google Earth and a lot more information and a lot of, probes and all that business. So I feel extremely confident to engage with anybody that wants to say that I'm wrong about the things I'm saying. Anybody, I don't care who they are. And I will Zoom with them, and we will record that and you know, respectfully. But they need to engage with this rather than to just dismiss it so out of hand. It's just not right.
Well, the result of this wide-sweeping theory, as I've said, was a flood of very harsh criticism and ridicule. The scientific community was almost unanimous in rejection of his work. Jacques Barzun, Dean of Graduate Faculties at Columbia University, wrote just recently that the merits of the scientific issue do not alter the deplorable treatment Dr. Velikovsky's ideas received from the profession. The prejudging scorn and closing of ranks against the heretic showed typical guild animus. In recent years, however, evidence collected during the geophysical year and by several space probes has tended to verify several of Velikovsky's predictions. For instance, he had said in the face of strong disagreement that because of her recent birth, Venus is extremely hot, a view subsequently borne out by observations of Mariner 2. He was accused of inventing an interplanetary magnetic field, but one has been detected since then by Pioneer 5. He claimed in 1950 that the ancient civilizations of Central America were much older than believed. Recently, this view, too, has been proved by radiocarbon dating. All in all, a score of Dr. Velikovsky's predictions have been verified, and the opposition within the scientific community has abated.
Wait a second. Hold on, my friend. First of all, I don't agree with all of Velikovsky's conclusions. There are several that I'm 100% sure he's wrong about, in my mind. Now, the opposition has abated? No, they just stopped trying to speak about it. They just pushed him off into the corner and stopped talking.
New voices are being heard. For instance, that of Lloyd Motz, professor of astronomy at Columbia University, who, while he still disagrees with Velikovsky, says his predictions should be recognized and his writings should be carefully studied and analyzed because they are the product of an extraordinary and brilliant mind and are based on some of the most concentrated and penetrating scholarship and research of our period.
That guy's probably gone. I had a lot, not a lot, I had several teachers. I don't know where they taught. They were some sort of a little bit standoffish, which I understand. And they said they were going to try to introduce this into their classes, and not a single one has gotten back to me since then. And this goes back years. So you cannot do this because you're going against what you're told to tell the students that they have to say to become educated, even though you know it's not true. They know it's not true anymore. I mean, if they're that incompetent, they certainly shouldn't be teaching if they know that it's not right anymore. I've shown so much evidence that it's impossible to stand in front of me and put up a defense. Can't be done. I'm waiting. Nobody's trying.
Here with us today on Camera 3 to discuss his theories with Dr. Velikovsky in his first television appearance is Eric Larrabee, an editor and writer whose articles about Dr. Velikovsky were the earliest attempts to make him familiar to a wider audience, and whose latest piece in Harper's Magazine has directed attention to a re-examination of the Velikovsky theories.
Well, you can watch this, and I would recommend you do, and we maybe come back and go through some more. But I want to show you his book, because it's on audio. You can listen to it. It's absolutely fabulous. And I want to at least give you the preface to the book, because you just heard what he had to say. I mean, they beat the hell out of this guy. They ruined his career. He made his living, and he made his status and all that stuff in their realm, and they just could not accept it, and they destroyed him. I am not in their realm because I never wanted to be in their realm, so they can't really destroy me the way they did him. All right, they can only just ignore me, and that's what they've done very successfully. So if you don't help out and get this word out, we're just going to be in the same position he's in. If you talk to your professors even today and you say, what about Emmanuel Velikovsky's work? They're going to tell you you're an idiot. they're going to call you an idiot. They say the guy's a quack. He was a quack. He was crazy. Nobody knows about him even today. Nobody knows. And I wrote a book about him because I was so upset. I called it Minds in Collision. His was Worlds in Collision. They destroyed him for writing out the truth. Same thing they're doing to me. Same thing they do to anybody that goes against what mainstream has professed. And once they profess and they have peer review, that's the end of it. You're done. There's no more discussion. Unless you want to throw in a couple of little extra words here and there and keep up, like they said, while he disagrees with Velikovsky, and then they sort of say something nice. But of course, the guy's an idiot, but all right, this is the audio of Worlds in Collision. It is fabulous. This is the publisher's preface. Now, look at how long this is. These are very long. They're half hour, 45 minutes a piece, and there's quite a few of them. Now, I'm just going to play the preface where he talks about Velikovsky and this situation.
In Collision by Emanuel Velikovsky, narrated by James Cameron Stewart. Publisher's Preface. Worlds in Collision is a special and extraordinary book, not only by its contents, but also by the response it has received. It is one of the few scientific books of the past centuries that have a direct, profound importance for humanity, individuals and society alike. In fact, it is a book that puts our present view of the world on a whole new fundament, not in some abstract, specialized disciplines remote from practical life, but in a broad range of areas like astronomy, cosmology, physics, geology, paleontology, biology, history, archaeology, literature, ethnology, theology, mythology, psychology. And in addition, it has an important influence on the way man sees himself individually and socially. It is the first time in centuries that a scientist didn't choose the direct way to his specialized colleagues in order to make the results of his research known, but addressed himself to the general public in a simple and clear language and presentation, for which he was harshly punished by the scientific establishment. It is exactly this reaction from representatives of the objective sciences, that even match some medieval practices, which shows that this book deeply shakes the foundations of our knowledge and belief. Because of this book being so special, it has deeply penetrated the consciousness of many people. Others, however, have preferred to forget it, or at least would like to do so. Due to this purposeful oblivion, a younger generation doesn't even know about it anymore, although today, almost 60 years after its first publication, it hasn't become less of a subject. On the contrary, due to new results of scientific research and recent geological and climatic developments, its importance has even increased. This, too, is something special in the flood of today's short-lived literary and scientific flash-in-the-pans. It is important for every one of us, and for science at large, to deal with this book. Therefore, we are happy to take upon ourselves the responsible task of making the complete works of Emanuel Velikovsky, not just this book, available to the public again in its unchanged form. Publishing this book, and this, unfortunately, also is something special for non-fiction, has required a fair amount of courage, which we proudly and consciously muster up. Paradigma Limited. Preface 1950. Worlds in Collision is a book of wars in the celestial sphere that took place in historical times. In these wars, the planet Earth participated too. This book describes two acts of a great drama, one that occurred 34 to 35 centuries ago, in the middle of the second millennium before the present era, the other in the 8th and the beginning of the 7th century before the present era, 26 centuries ago. Accordingly, this volume consists of 2 parts, preceded by a prologue. Harmony, or stability, in the celestial and terrestrial spheres is the point of departure of the present-day concept of the world, as expressed in the celestial mechanics of Newton and the theory of evolution of Darwin. If these 2 men of science are sacrosanct, this book is a heresy. However, modern physics of atoms and of the quantum theory describes dramatic changes in the microcosm, the atom, the prototype of the solar system. A theory, then, that envisages not dissimilar events in the macrocosm, the solar system, brings the modern concepts of physics to the celestial sphere. This book is written for the instructed and uninstructed alike. No formula and no hieroglyphic will stand in the way of those who set out to read it. If occasionally historical evidence does not square with formulated laws, it should be remembered that a law is but a deduction from experience and experiment, and therefore laws must conform with historical facts, not facts with laws. One is not asked to accept a theory without question. Rather, he is invited to consider for himself whether he is listening to a book of fiction or non-fiction, whether what he is listening to is invention or historical fact. On one point alone, not necessarily decisive for the theory of cosmic catastrophism, I borrow credence. I use a synchronical scale of Egyptian and Hebrew histories which is not orthodox. It was in the spring of 1940 that I came upon the idea that in the days of the Exodus, as evident from many passages of the Scriptures, there occurred a great physical catastrophe, and that such an event could serve in determining the time of the Exodus in Egyptian history, or in establishing a synchronical scale for the histories of the peoples concerned. Thus I started Ages in Chaos, a reconstruction of the history of the ancient world from the middle of the 2nd millennium before the present era to the advent of Alexander the Great. Already in the fall of that same year, 1940, I felt that I had acquired an understanding of the real nature and extent of that catastrophe, and for 9 years I worked on both projects, the political and the natural histories. Although Ages in Chaos was finished first, in the order of publication, it will follow this way. Worlds in Collision comprises only the last 2 acts of the cosmic drama. A few earlier acts, one of them known as the Deluge, will be the subject of another volume of natural history. The historical cosmological story of this book is based on the evidence of historical texts of many peoples around the globe, on classical literature, on epics of northern races, on sacred books of the peoples of the Orient and Occident, on traditions and folklore of primitive peoples, on old astronomical inscriptions and charts, on archaeological finds, and also on geological and paleontological material. If cosmic upheavals occurred in the historical past, why does not the human race remember them? And why was it necessary to carry on research to find out about them? I discuss this problem in the section The Collective Amnesia. The task I had to accomplish was not unlike that faced by a psychoanalyst who, out of disassociated memories and dreams, reconstructs a forgotten traumatic experience in the early life of an individual. In an analytical experiment on mankind, historical inscriptions and legendary motifs often play the same role as recollections, infantile memories, and dreams in the analysis of a personality. Can we, out of this polymorphous material, establish actual facts? We shall check one people against another, one inscription against another, epics against charts, geology against legends, until we are able to extract the historical facts. In a few cases it is impossible to say with certainty whether a record or a tradition refers to one or another catastrophe that took place through the ages. It is also probable that in some traditions various elements from different ages are fused together. In the final analysis, however, it is not so essential to segregate definitively the records of single world catastrophes. More important, it seems, is to establish, one, that there were physical upheavals of a global character in historical times, two, that these catastrophes were caused by extraterrestrial agents, and three, that these agents can be identified. There are many implications that follow from these conclusions. I refer to them in the epilogue so that I can omit reference to them here. The years when Ages in Chaos and Worlds in Collision were written were years of a world catastrophe created by man, of war that was fought on land, on sea, and in the air. During that time, man learned how to take apart a few of the bricks of which the universe is built, the atoms of uranium. If one day he should solve the problem of the fission and fusion of the atoms of which the crust of the earth or its water and air are composed, he may perchance, by initiating a chain reaction, take this planet out of the struggle for survival among the members of the celestial sphere. The author, New York, September 1949.
Okay. This is going to be a trip through what his research was. And I have new research that supports some of what he said, and it doesn't support other things that he said. That's what science is. That's what research is. You come up with the best you can come up with, and then you discuss it over and over and over. And it changes virtually every single time. There'll be another little piece of the puzzle will just drop in there and say, oh, I never realized that. Whoa, just think about this now. And this happens to me every single day. I mean, multiple times. If you pay attention, that's what's going to happen.